Means Committee. Today is Tuesday, December 16th. If you have any cell phones, we appreciate if you turn them off. And at this point, we would look for approval of the minutes of 11/18/08.
So moved as presented to us in the corrected version on our table.
Okay?
Support.
And we have a motion by Larry and a support by Larry. Inman and Fleece.
Larry, Darrell.
Where's Darrell? Larry, we're looking for her.
Any other discussion or changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. At this time, we have time in our agenda for public comment. Go ahead, on up.
Hi, for those of you who were at the last meeting, LNA, my name is Sandy Miller, and I work with 16 great associates at the Department of Public Works. And I'd like to say a couple comments on the pre-65 retirement insurance program and the recommendations that were included in the agenda. Would you like those now or when it's
That's
open?
fine.
Okay. I understand that there are only 2 people that would be involved in the retroactive payment. I ask that you would reconsider that. I believe I am one of the parties that might be grandfathered in because I am retiring in January. And if that's approved, I thank you in advance. I believe that the cap of $375 a month for our insurance between our eligibility and age 65 is generous. I do have an issue with the recommendation that you change the age and service requirements. And I'll use the numbers from my department because that's what I'm familiar with. We have 16 employees there. 50% of them will be fine because they will have their 20 years of service in by the time they turn 55. The others will not. There are 4 who will turn 55 at a time when it'll cause that this insurance would kick in, like if they're 61, 62, 63. There's 2 that are 63 and the one at, who'd I forget? One at 63, 2 at 62, there it is, and 1 at 61. Sorry about that. So they will have a reduced benefit. There are 4 if I would count myself, if I'm not grandfathered in, who will have no eligibility. And they have paid for this benefit since they have been hired. And that's because they were hired as an older worker, such as I was, and so they aren't going to have any opportunity. One of them will be 71 by the time they would have their 20 years service, another 67, another 65, and myself, I would be 66 by the time I'd have my 20 years of service. So I ask you to revisit that and look at all the people in this group and see if there is some type of compensation that could be given to those who won't qualify for this benefit that they have helped pay for by giving up their cost of living increase. Another question I ask you to reconsider is the one-time opt-in. I believe you're right in saying when I retire, I know that I'm going to take this benefit. But if my husband were still working and he had insurance, wouldn't it be to your advantage if I could be on his insurance for me to do so? And then if he retired in the future and I lost my insurance coverage, for you to allow me to opt into this retirement program? I think it might be beneficial to the county to look at that. I believe that the clarification is good. You've made it clear it's COBRA or the pre-65 retiring insurance. I thank you too for considering this. In today's economy, it would be real easy for you as an employer to say, too expensive, we can't afford it. We don't have it for everybody, why are we going to do it for you? So I do appreciate the fact that you're even considering this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Anybody else with public comment?
I really don't have any public comment, but I do have public comment from a constituent of mine on the disposition of the Borden River dams. And I did promise him that I would pass this on to our county administrator, who will be attending the meeting tonight later, since I will not be able to attend. So if you would pass that down, that's all I have.
Okay. All right. Any other public comment? If not, we'll go on to the next item of the agenda. It's a request for 2%, support of 2% applications, and we have one addition that we were adding to it, which is the Traverse City Junior Golf Association for the amount of $16,400.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I make a motion to approve these? And since Sonny's not here, I'll put in his 2 cents of that they give us no guidance as to what the high priority is.
Thought we were going to go away from that.
Well, I figured
Yep.
if I didn't say it or someone didn't, Sonny'd feel
Yep.
that we'd miss him.
Okay, I have I have a motion to approve the 2% applications. That's support by Bruce. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Next on the agenda is administration, which is the administrator's evaluation. And you have in there a letter from Chairman Wheelock, and you have a copy of the evaluations, and you have a copy of the performances, or the comments. Is there anybody would like to make any other comment? Larry?
Just kind of relay that I feel Dennis did an excellent job for us this year. I really don't see a difference worth really trying to emphasize in terms of his overall rating compared to last year. You're going to have a discrepancy between one county commissioner rating him a 9 and versus a 10 that's going to, kick him a little bit off, up or down. But, my expectation is that, if he's exceeding expectations, which is in the 8 to 8.5 range, that's where I'd like to see our administrator at. And for the last 2 years since we've been doing this evaluation, he's fit in that category. So I feel that he's doing a great job for us. And this is really a good tool for us and for him to understand his performance on an annualized basis. So that's just a comment I have.
Is there any other comment? Can I have a motion for receive and file?
So moved.
Support. Motion by Inman, support by Thomas to receive and file. Any other discussion?
I have a couple.
Would you like to comment on it?
Please. Thank you, Commissioners, for taking the time to do this evaluation. I much appreciate it. One thing that I think is, one thing I want you to know is that I'll continue to strive to improve and do a good job for you and the citizens of Grand Traverse County. In looking at this, I do believe that it would be in all of our best interest to try to find a way to strengthen this evaluation in a way that would give me more direction so that I can work on improvement. I think what we have now is a tool that kind of identifies your feelings about where I'm at, but it doesn't give a great deal of guidance in terms of what your expectations of me are. And, we tried doing that with this quarterly performance review based on what, my goals for the year. But, we've done 3 of those, and there have been no comments to me on any of those. And so it's very difficult for me to change things or improve things or do things differently to meet your expectations until the end of the year report comes out. And then, we get a report, but I still don't have a lot of direction on what kinds of things I specifically need to do to improve. And I really want to do that, but I need some help from you on that. So I've talked about a couple of things that I'd like you to consider doing. One thing, I'd like to thank Commissioner Inman for taking some time with me over the last week to talk about this evaluation. It's been very helpful. And then Commissioner Lemkuhl and Wheelock did as well. I'd like to look at modifying this a little bit in a way that makes it more meaningful for you, and it gives me a little more direction. And so what I'm thinking is, the first step, I will go ahead and I will try to prepare, based on the 2009 strategic planning goals, a work plan for me for 2009. And as I do every year, when I bring it back to you, I would hope that you would, if it's not what you want, that you would give me some different direction, because one of the comments I heard in here was that we're not real clear on the direction that of your expectations of me. And so if we could do that, I think that would be very helpful. And then the second step that I think I would like to do is change this up a little bit so that I have more input from you on an ongoing basis. So what I'm suggesting, at Commissioner Inman's suggestion actually, is I'd like to when we do our quarterly review and I bring you my quarterly update of progress, I'll share that with the board, and then what I'd like to do is schedule a meeting with each of you at each quarter, 15 minutes, a half an hour, whatever you think is appropriate, so that we can actually sit on one-on-one and kind of talk about where we're at in things. And then maybe we'll even develop a one-page assessment that we'll give you quarterly. And then you'll be able to look at that and tell me, here's where I rank you this quarter, just a simple ranking. Here are some things that I think you need to work on, some areas where you could strengthen what you're doing, and here are some other suggestions I have for the future. And I'm hoping that with that, then, we'll be able to kind of bring that back to you as a board and then formulate some more concrete things, so that from quarter to quarter, we'll have a better and more meaningful dialogue about the progress that I'm making. So that, because my goal truly is, as I'm sure yours is, to do the best job that we can for the county, and I think with a little bit of assistance in that regard, we might be able to better do that. I also want to mention that if you have any other suggestions, or please, if you have any comments on improvement that I can do, feel free to call me anytime, let me know your thoughts on it. That would be very much appreciated.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Next on the agenda is the pre-65 50% health coverage from the LNA.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I could, you asked for some more information, so I'd like to pass this. I wanted to kind of explain this a little bit to you. Sally Dreves is here, too, from Human Resources, who put a lot of this information together, and Dean and I have gone over this as well. On page 38, you'll see the totals that you asked for. We have 247 employees that basically are in this kind of program, eligibility in this kind of program. They include the non-contract exempt and non-contract hourly, Teamsters District Court, Teamsters Command, Teamsters Sergeant, and then POAM deputies. But I believe POAM deputies is that grandfathered? At some point, did it change for the group?
Yes, it
Oh,
changed.
excuse me, yes, I'm sorry.
2006.
Yeah, it started in 2006, and the reason they were added to this group, you might find that unusual that we would add them into a program like this, but in order to get in this pre-65 program, they gave up post-65 retirement that they had. So they have no retirement after 65 other than the pool. They gave that up to get this. So I wanted to get that information to you. And this set of recommendations is just a group of things that we asked to put together for you for your consideration if you decide to do this. If you decide to move forward with this, we think some parameters like we've listed at the bottom of page 38 are important. They may not be exactly what you want to do or exactly what you're looking for, but let me tell you what we're trying to guard against. Under this plan, someone could come here when they're 22 or 25, and they could work here for 10 years, at which time they're vested under the defined contribution plan. They could go away and work another 20 years someplace else, and when they hit 55, come back and say, I'd like half my paid medical. That's how nebulous the plans are right now. So Dean has been working on this with me and with our HR department prior to the director leaving. What we're trying, and we haven't had a lot of success, but what we're trying to negotiate into the contracts is a requirement that if someone's eligible for this plan, that they can achieve this plan, get this plan, when they leave, when they retire and leave here, as opposed to leaving here, going and working other places, and then coming back 15 years later and saying, hey, pay my health care. And so that's what the concept here we're getting at. 20 years may not be the right number, 15 years may not be the right number, or maybe the right number, maybe just directly retiring from here is the right thing. But that's kind of what we are trying to achieve. We're trying to eliminate that idea that someone could go away for a period of time and then come back years later and say, I'd like to get health insurance from you. So that's kind of our main goal. Sally, is that kind of what we were talking about? That's one of the main issues we face. So these are some ideas we have, and what we're also suggesting here is that if you decide to move this forward, it really needs to be negotiated with those other groups that are Teamsters. Those have to be negotiated. What we're really suggesting is the employees that we're talking about right now are non-union employees, and so what we're suggesting is the appropriate strategy and approach to this would be if you make a change on this benefit or clarify this for the non-union people, you have the right, obviously, to put whatever restrictions on there you want. And then when the union employees would come back and say, hey, us too, we would say, of course, but here are the restrictions that will have to go along with that acceptance of that change. So that's kind of where we're coming from on this, and so would ask you to consider some of those limitations on the program, and then we would go back and bargain with the other bargaining groups.
This is for the employee, not for the spouse.
That's correct. It's only for half of the premium of the employee. And if you decide to do this for COBRA, we would say it should be half of whatever the COBRA premium is. One other distinction Dean and I talked about today with Sally is you might wonder why the retiree's health cost is more than the COBRA cost. And that's because the COBRA cost is really based on our premium for our current employees, which is a younger population, lower experience costs, things like that. The retiree insurance has to be a separate, standalone retiree program, where our employees or our retired employees are older and probably have more medical issues, and so the actual experience is worse, so the premium is higher. That's why there's a difference in cost.
But don't we have a different insurance program for those that are on Medicare?
That's post-65.
Post-65.
And that's the umbrella plan that we
Right.
have. So this is only pre-65.
Right. So, any other discussion,
I guess I have
questions?
some questions.
Yep.
So the recommendations on 38 is what you and Human Resources
Yeah, this is
are
what
recommending?
Sally from Human Resources and I basically
So when
came
you
up
say
with.
no retroactivity,
Well, let me explain that a little bit, because
Yeah.
Sandy
because we have
brought
two
that up as
individuals, I
well.
think, that were here, or they're here
Well,
today discussing.
Here's what you have to understand. When we were not able to go back and look through the years at how many other employees may have taken this benefit, and we've only given them the COBRA without any kind of premium. We went back, Sally went back through January of this year to see who was eligible, and there are 2 employees.
Two.
When I asked Sally, how about before this? Well, we haven't gone back through the records to check, but I mean, there could be numerous employees that have taken benefit. Is that correct, Sally?
2007 is still the one person who started in '07.
So no, just one?
Probably not a lot.
Okay. There will be others, though, that we weren't able to identify. So the point was, if you decide not to make it retroactive, anybody else who had received it prior to this time, I think, would have a legitimate claim to come back to you and say, you need to reimburse me for that as well, because I wasn't in the same plan. So that's the only reason we said you might want to put some parameters on it if you decide to move forward with that.
I'm a bit confused on the recommendation. So let's say, for example, somebody retires from here with 20 years, and they're 53 years old. So there's a 2-year gap. And then they come back at age 55 and say, I want that benefit. Is this recommendation saying they can't have that?
I'm going to let Sally answer that.
Because there's
Sally, would you come up to the table, please?
Yep, Sally, come up here, please.
Thank you.
Why we set the age, or the idea of age 55, is that's the limit on DC when they can first draw without a penalty. And also the parameters for the DB plan is age 55. So they shouldn't be able to retire at age 53 and draw a pension. So that idea of retirement would not hold true before 55.
If he's asking if they leave at 53, and then they come back and say, well, I want to retire.
Well, right now, they could do that and say, then I want my half-paid
Wow.
health. What we're trying to do is set
Eliminate
parameters
that. Yeah.
to fill in this gap, because this is a huge expense.
Oh, yeah.
And as Dean will address, under the OPEB liability, we're talking millions of dollars. We need to put some parameters on this.
And as is the case, as you might expect, if you hear that case and you say someone's 53 and they've worked here 20 years, but they can't actually draw the retirement to 25 and they leave, you might say, well, geez, that's a couple of years, that seems reasonable to let them draw. But then there's the other case of someone who starts when they're 25, works 10 years, and starts drawing at 55, and they've now been gone for 20 years and come back and say, hey, I want help. So that's kind of the issue. So I think Sally explained it correctly. We based it on when the normal retirement time is. But, I think Sandy does have a point, so if you're 55 but you've only worked here, 10 years or 15 years and you're under DC, you start drawing the retirement, correct?
You can, that's the earliest age.
Yeah, so, you may want to address that a little bit. I mean, we just think some parameters need to be put on.
I mean, my final, I guess, comment is, I don't know if there's anything magic with 20 years.
Well, for this magnitude of a benefit, what would be a fair age?
Well, that's the question.
Yeah, that's the,
I think we've already
I think
covered
I think a
20.
minimum would be 15, maybe a maximum would be 20.
I mean, we talked about 15 when we were trying to get the
Yeah.
strategy for negotiating with the unions.
Nobody can get more than
And we had talked about doing it at 15.
Or 8.
And I think the thing was, is that we wanted to, I think in the best of all worlds, the person would retire from here and take the benefit, as opposed to going away and then coming back. That was kind of what we were trying to achieve, and that's why we picked the age 55 with 20, because that's the earliest undefined benefit, correct?
trying to limit our liability exposure, basically. So that's why we're looking at these
I
parameters.
suppose you could, I'm just throwing this out, I haven't talked to Sally about this. I suppose you could do it differently, and you could say, you must be a minimum of, you must qualify for retirement and be a minimum of 55 or have 20 years of service. I mean, you could do something different like that if you chose. That's widening the gap, that's widening it a little bit. But then the person who worked here 10 or 12 years and could qualify retirement and, would meet that guideline then, because that'd be at least 55 when they
Yeah.
left. That would take care of the older employee who comes to work with us later in life.
I mean, I would be okay with it. I mean, 15 would be fine with me. I don't know if that many people stay 20 years to employer, but 15 is fair, I think, but...
Well, I think another thing we have to do is we have to look at how do we encourage people to stick around to continue working for us, because, we are a quality organization, but on the same token, sometimes people have a tendency to want to get out early, and so they do, and then they wish they hadn't. I'll give you a perfect example is when we did the early retirements. There were some people that took the early retirements and then wished afterwards they may not have, because they found out that they had to go back to work someplace else. And we lost very valuable employees in that process. So what's...
I'm just going to throw this in.
Yeah.
As a comparison,
Years of service
in the
at age
state of
55.
Michigan, they have what they call 80 and all. It's a combination of your years of service and your age. And if you're 50 and have 30 years, you can retire. Otherwise, you're going to be older than 50.
The Boy Scouts have such a plan too, adding the age and the years of service.
Is it 80 or is it
It's
lower?
85, I think.
Wow, that's huge.
Chris?
Well, I just wanted to mention, when I worked for Shell, that's what we had, 80-point plan, your age plus your years of service. And then and when you did retire, if you had 30 years of service, you would get a higher percentage of your premium paid versus if you were retiring with 15 years of service, and then you would be expected to pay a higher percentage of your benefits. I think this needs to go back for further study.
Any other, Larry?
Dennis,
Yes.
the figures you have here on 38, the savings to the employee by allowing the COBRA over the early retiree is roughly $1,700, is that correct? Am I reading that correct?
That is for,
That would be the savings to the county if somebody, based on the 2009 rates, the difference between COBRA and the early retiree cost, if somebody went directly from COBRA right into the early retiree group, that would be the savings to the county based on current rates of 2009.
the cost, Commissioner, would be the $33.82.74, correct?
Yeah.
Right, and that's the
So actually,
$1,700's the
the
difference.
county then, according to Sally, is saving $1,700, plus the employee's saving also, correct?
Well, yes, that's assuming
We're
they
opening it
decide to
up.
take the retiree health.
Correct.
Yeah,
Somebody
you know.
could take COBRA for a few months, and we could incur liability for that where we normally wouldn't. So there's no guarantee that somebody's going to go from COBRA to the early retiree group.
See, right now, we're not paying anything for someone who goes on COBRA for 18 months. We're not paying any of it. Right, Sally?
Correct.
That's correct. If they went on our retiree plan, we're paying half the cost of the premium for the employee who retires.
Which is higher.
So, you're right, if we were paying mandatorily, we were paying, from the day they retire, we were paying half the cost of the employee under the retiree health. This is a savings. The thing, though, is we have never paid that. So that's where it's